Seasons of Maple Ridge. Chapters 17 to 20. By the next morning, word had already spread. That's how things went in Maple Ridge. You couldn't sneeze at the market without someone 3 blocks away offering you tissues. So when Betty called Marla about the bridge, and Marla told Luke, and Luke told his cousin, who happened to work for the local radio station, it didn't take long before Betty's name was on everyone's lips. Betty Hargrave wants to save Mill Creek Bridge. She hadn't expected a spotlight. She'd only wanted to have the conversation. But within days, people started showing up, at her door, at Pine and Bean, even while she was watering the flowers in her front yard. Everyone had a story. "I learned to drive on that bridge," said Dwayne, the town mechanic. "My parents had their first kiss there," added young Callie from the post office. "My husband proposed to me right in the middle of that rickety thing." Mrs. Baxter beamed. Betty realized it wasn't just her past hanging in the balance. The bridge, weathered and worn, had silently woven itself into the tapestry of countless lives. That Friday, she walked down to the town hall, not for a meeting this time, but to start one. She requested a hearing with the town council, and Mayor Dalton, bless him, scheduled it immediately for Monday evening. The turnout surprised everyone. Every seat in the old building was filled. Folks stood in the back, some even leaning in through open windows from outside. Eleanor from the library brought a scrapbook of newspaper clippings and bridge photos from the last 50 years. Luke offered to organize volunteers for repair. Jenna from the coffee shop said they'd donate proceeds from their next Bridge Blend fundraiser roast. Betty stood at the front. She didn't have a slideshow or a fancy speech, just a worn letter from James and a story to tell. "You don't tear down a bridge just because it's old," she said simply. "Not if it's still strong. Not if it still connects people." There was a pause. Then applause. Loud, genuine, rising from every corner of the room. By week's end, the town council voted unanimously to preserve the bridge. They'd file for historic designation, partner with the county for safety repairs, and, perhaps most importantly, host an annual Bridge Day festival to celebrate it. Marla handed Betty a flyer mock-up the next morning. A sketch of the bridge, kids flying kites, a fiddler in the corner, and bold letters that read, "Bridging Generations, Mill Creek Festival, June 12th. Betty laughed so hard she nearly dropped her coffee. "That sounds like something my brother would have called corny, and then shown up to anyway." In saving the bridge, Betty had found something unexpected. She hadn't just reconnected with her past. She had connected a town to its future. There hadn't been a town festival in Maple Ridge since 2009, when the 4th of July celebration was rained out and the committee quit en masse after a heated debate over potato salad. But something was different now. Maybe it was the bridge. Maybe it was Betty. More likely, it was the fact that, after years of slipping into quiet routines, The people of Maple Ridge finally had something worth gathering for again. And once the flyer hit the post office wall, the grocery store bulletin board, and the digital marquee in front of the high school gym, everyone wanted in. Betty had never organized a festival in her life. Luckily, Maple Ridge was full of folks who had, and a few who believed they could figure it out. Luke Jenkins took charge of music. He and his wife, Nadine, recruited local talent, bluegrass pickers, high school singers, and even Mr. Walter from the pharmacy, who surprised everyone by admitting he played a mean harmonica. "I haven't blown a note in 20 years, he said, "but if we're bringing the town back, I might as well bring the music." Marla coordinated food vendors. The church ladies offered pies. The town diner pledged pulled pork sandwiches. Even teenagers got involved, organizing lemonade stands and a bridge-shaped cookie fundraiser. No one knew exactly how a bridge-shaped cookie should look, but they tried anyway. And Betty. She floated from group to group, part cheerleader, part glue. She read letters at the planning meetings to inspire folks. James's words were now a kind of lighthouse, keeping things grounded in meaning, not just logistics. She helped Mrs. Green with the bunting, convinced old Mr. Farley to bring out his antique tractor for hayrides, and gently refused when someone suggested putting her face on the festival shirts. "I'm not the point," she said with a smile. "The bridge is." Still, everywhere she turned, people thanked her. Not just for the bridge, but for bringing them back. For reminding them they were part of something worth holding on to. 2 weeks before the festival, the town gathered on a warm Sunday morning for a bridge cleanup day. Over 60 people showed up. Grandparents and toddlers. Longtime residents and newcomers. They scrubbed, painted, replaced planks, fixed the railing, and planted wildflowers along the path leading to the water. Someone brought a radio and played Sam Cooke. By noon, people were dancing in the grass. Betty stood at the top of the bridge, arms crossed, eyes misty. "Think we pulled it off?" Marla asked, wiping paint from her nose. Betty nodded. "More than that. I think we remembered who we are." Later that evening, sitting on her porch, sipping iced tea and listening to the crickets, Betty opened the last letter in James's box. She hadn't read it before. The envelope was unsealed. The handwriting more hurried than the others. "Dear Bet, if you ever wonder whether you made the right choice in coming home, look around. Not at me. Not at what was. But at what you're doing now. People like us, we're not meant to stand still. But we're meant to build things that last. See you at the bridge. J." The morning of the Mill Creek Festival dawned bright, breezy, and impossibly blue. Not a cloud dared drift across the sky. For the first time in years, the air buzzed with something more than humidity. It buzzed with hope. Betty woke early. She brewed a pot of strong coffee, sat quietly with her thoughts, and let the sounds of birds and distant lawnmowers ease her into the day. She didn't rush. She didn't need to. Everything was already in motion. When she finally walked toward the bridge, wearing a soft linen blouse, her wide-brimmed sun hat, and a pin that read "Bridge Builder," she was greeted by a sight that made her breath catch. Balloons fluttered from fences. Long picnic tables lined the grass, draped with red-checked cloths. The stage was up near the water, flanked by hay bales and speakers. The bridge itself, sturdy, freshly painted, and flanked with flower boxes, stood like an honored elder welcoming the town home. Hundreds of people had come from Maple Ridge and beyond. Generations gathered, toddlers in suspenders, grandmas in lawn chairs, teens glued to their phones but still smiling. Laughter rang from the cornhole toss. Music rolled in from the fiddle band on stage. The scent of grilled corn, smoked brisket, and homemade pies floated through the air. "Betty!" called out voice after voice as she made her way through the crowd. Hugs. Handshakes. Thank yous whispered like prayers. At noon, Mayor Dalton climbed onto the stage with his tie slightly askew and a microphone in his hand. He cleared his throat. "Folks," he began, "I've lived in Maple Ridge all my life, and I can honestly say I haven't seen this many smiles in one place since gas was under $1. Laughter rippled across the field. "We came here today to celebrate a bridge. But let's be honest, it ain't just about wood and nails. It's about stories. It's about people. And one of those people, someone who reminded us that the old things are still worth saving, is right here with us. Betty Hargrave, would you please come on up?" A cheer rose up, louder than Betty expected. Someone started clapping. Then everyone did. Blushing, overwhelmed, and trying not to trip over her own feet, she climbed the stairs. Well, I didn't plan to speak," she said, clutching the microphone awkwardly. "But if I've learned anything lately, it's that bridges aren't just something you cross. They're something you carry with you." She paused, her eyes finding familiar faces. "I carried this one in my heart for 40 years. And now we all get to share it again." Applause thundered. Tears welled. And at the back of the crowd, Marla held up a sign that read, "See you at the bridge." As the day wore on, kids played tag in the grass. Couples danced under string lights. Veterans told old war stories near the creek bank. And a young girl, barely 6, stood in the middle of the bridge and dropped an acorn into the water below. Just like Betty and James once had. The cycle, it seemed, had begun again. That night, as the final song faded and the moon rose silver over Maple Ridge, Betty sat on a hay bale and watched fireflies blink across the field. She felt something she hadn't in a long, long time. Not just peace. Belonging. The festival was over, but Maple Ridge wasn't quite ready to let it go. For days afterward, the town seemed to hum with a gentle afterglow. People left decorations up a little longer than necessary. Bits of bunting fluttered from porches. The coffee shop kept the bridge blend on special. Even the kids at the school playground kept pretending they were crossing the bridge, yelling dramatic lines like, "Don't fall in," and "Guard the crossing." Betty walked the path to the bridge each morning that week, coffee in hand, her steps slow and deliberate. The wildflowers the volunteers had planted were already peeking through the soil. She counted them like little promises. 12 daisies, 7 purple asters, a cluster of something she didn't recognize yet. Each morning, she met someone else walking the same way. First it was Mr. Farley, the antique tractorman, who told her he hadn't seen that many neighbors out in years. Then it was young Callie from the post office, who confessed that she and her boyfriend had danced on the bridge under the festival lights after everyone had gone home. "It was like a movie," she said, blushing. Then came Jenna from the coffee shop, Luke with his guitar case, Marla carrying fresh scones. It was as if the bridge had become more than a location again. It was a ritual, a meeting place, a reminder. One Thursday morning, Betty brought a notebook with her. She sat on the bench near the bridge and started writing. Not letters this time, but ideas. Not big ones. Simple things. Like community recipe swap at the library. Garden club meets at the bridge once a month. Elder stories night. Bring a folding chair and a tale. She didn't know who would run them. She didn't even know if she would. But she knew now that this town, once quiet and folded in on itself, wanted something to lean toward. Something to show up for. To connect around. It was funny, really. Betty had spent most of her life running away from quiet towns and gentle rhythms. But now, in the softness of it all, in these shared sunrises and porch conversations and pie contests, she felt not trapped, but alive. One evening, as she trimmed the hedge in her front yard, a car pulled into her drive. A silver hatchback she didn't recognize. Out stepped a man in his 60s with kind eyes and a crooked grin. "Betty Hargrave?" he asked. She stood up slowly, blinking. "Yes." He offered a hand. "I'm Tom, James's nephew. He told me all about you." The air stilled. Her heart quickened. "He wrote you into everything," Tom said with a chuckle. "I've been cleaning out his apartment in Denver. Came across a stack of drawings, plans, old letters. I saw your name everywhere. Thought I'd come see the bridge for myself." She invited him in, heart full and cautious. They talked for hours. Tom told her how James had never married, but had always spoken of one woman who changed him. Said she loved stories and believed bridges weren't meant to be burned. They sat on the porch until dark, fireflies blinking once again across the yard. By the end of the evening, they made plans to meet again. No promises. Just possibilities. Betty went to bed that night and didn't dream of the past. She dreamt of the next festival. Of kids painting signs. of Marla dancing in the grass, of her sitting with Tom beneath the string lights, watching a town celebrate its own second act. Thanks for listening, friends. This has been James, just sharing a piece of my heart with you. If this story reminded you of someone or something dear, go ahead and like, subscribe, and maybe share it with a friend who needs a moment of peace. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and take care of your memories.